percent composition is out of 100. So we are taking these values, we're figuring out how much is that element contributing to a total molar mass, right? Molar mass, remember, is your formula mass, which is coming from your periodic tables, right? It's taking all these little decimal values, adding them together for an entire formula, including the subscripts, right? And so it's saying, okay, how much does that element contribute to that total molar mass, right? So the process, pretty easy. You're taking the mass of an element of 1 mole of the compound. So what that means to you is you're going to have your subscript times your molar mass of the element, which is just your formula mass, right? So your subscript times the molar mass. That's what this means. Okay, it's just written fancy. All right, so subscript times the molar mass from the periodic table. We're going to take that value and we're going to divide it by the molar mass of the entire compounds, which is a total mass. So that means adding up all the individual molar masses to make a total molar mass. That's what you guys have experience doing. Once you have a top number and a bottom number, part divided by whole, you're going to end up with a decimal. This decimal should never be above 1. Never. If it does, you're probably doing something wrong, because the whole point of a percentage is that it's out of 100. 100 is like $1, right? And it's never above the 1 decimal form, I guess you could say, right? So everything should be below that number 1. So we're going to multiply it by 100. Does anybody remember what the shortcut is for multiplying by 100? Deals with the decimal. You move it 2 times to the, right, to the right. All right, so you're basically turning it into a number. I recommend report your answer with 2 decimal places. So don't round along the way. Try not to. I'm going to be taking mine to 3 along the way. So these 2 numbers should have 3 decimals. And then once I change it to be a percentage, I'm going to go to 2 decimal places. So that's what I recommend. All right. So do your best with trying to do that on your calculation. So let's go ahead and look at an example. Okay. So we have the percent composition of copper 1 sulfide. So I gave you the little formula right there. Right. So Cu little 2, and then there's an S. So I'm going to go ahead and make myself a row for copper. Okay. So copper, I see that I have a little 2. So I'm going to go ahead and say 2 times. And now I'm going to take the value for copper from my periodic table. So from my periodic table, I see 63.546. So I'm going to multiply those to get my number, okay? So my work, I'm going to spread out. You could theoretically do exactly what we wrote up here, which is put parentheses, and you can do that multiplication in there. But what I'm going to be doing is showing you spread out. That way you can add them up to get your total molar mass. That's the only reason I'm showing a little more work than you necessarily have to, okay? All right, so if I do that 2 times 63.546, I get 127.092. So I'm going to leave that alone. All right, I took it to 3 decimal places. All right, cool. So then I'm going to focus on sulfur. Sulfur has no subscript, so that means a 1. I'm going to multiply that by its molar mass from the periodic table, 32.066, right? So just these decimal numbers straight from the periodic table. Hopefully you don't have to type that one in. It's just going to be itself, right? So we have now, this is the total mass of copper, the total mass of sulfur in this compound. So now we should just get the total molar mass. So I'm going to add those 2 values together, just like you guys have done when you were calculating molar mass on that previous worksheet. So 159.158, and this is grams per mole. All right, so now I have my parts over my whole, right? So my pieces over the total molar mass. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to have my 127.092. I'm going to divide that by my total molar mass to get a decimal number. Again, it should be less than the number 1. So 127.092 divided by that, and I get 7985. Let me write it on a new line. 7985. Okay? So at this point, now I'm going to multiply that by 100, and I get 79.85%. So copper is 79.85%. Okay, I know I ran out of room, so I kind of wrote it going down. So I'll go ahead and do sulfur off to the side on the left-hand side. Sulfur, you're going to have 32.066, all divided by 159.158. And you can multiply it by 100 as well. So we get 0.201. I'm going to round up since there's a 7 behind my 4. So this is what I have in my calculator. And I know that I'm going to be going to 2 decimal places technically. So I'm going to go ahead and look at my 4, round up. If you don't do that, that's okay. Okay. So then when I multiply it by 100, again, that just means move that decimal 2 to the right. So I get 20.15%. So 79.85% and 20.15%. Okay, so looking at this, do you guys have any questions so far? Pretty straightforward, right? It's just molar masses all over again. So lots of adding and dividing, right? All right, so the next one is set up a little differently, so I do want to show you that one, okay? It says how much silver can be produced from 145 grams of silver sulfide, okay? So you don't need to use this value in order to do our first step. So don't worry about having that yet. We have to first figure out the percent of silver. That's your first step. Once you have a percentage, now you can multiply it by any mass given to you, and that tells you what the amount of silver is. Okay? So just to kind of, you guys take more control over this one, okay? So we have to figure out silver. So I have silver. Ultimately, do we need to know what the total molar mass is? Yeah, right? That's part of the process. So I'm going to go ahead and make a line for sulfur, even though I don't need to figure out the percentage, right? So I'm going to go ahead and have my 2, and then what's the molar mass of silver? Look at your periodic tables. Perfect. Yep. 107.868. Okay. You're going to get a value for that. Sulfur, we have, again, nothing next to it, so we're going to say 1 times 32.066, which is just itself. So, and remember, the only reason we're figuring this part out is because we need this total number in order to figure out our percentage of silver. So, did anybody get the mass of 2 silvers? 215.736. Yes, everyone? Okay, cool. Awesome. So you're just going to add those together to get our total molar mass, right? So when we added those together to get the total, we end up with what did you guys get? 247.802. So we just need this value and this value to figure out my percentage of silver. Okay, so we did all of this just to get that number. Fun stuff. All right, so we're going to go ahead and now take that silver value, which is the 215.736, over the total to figure out a percentage. So you'll get a decimal. Remember, you can move that decimal 2 times to the right once you get that answer. So what percentage are we getting? Mm-hmm. So I have a 87.0. You said 0.5? All right, what's after the 5? Nothing? Oh, 9. Okay, so what do we want to do with that 5 probably? Let's round up to a 6, yeah. Again, if you don't, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. All right, so we have 87.06% silver. So now we can figure out, okay, what is that of the 145? Now there's 2 ways to do this, okay? You could have actually left it in that decimal form and just multiply it by that value. Because if I take this and multiply it, it's going to make a huge number. And that, you know, that's not true, right? It can't be more than what you have. So you could have left it 0.8706 multiplied by the 145. Or we can take our new value, because you just worked hard to get that, right? We can say, okay, 87.06 is to 100 as what is to 145. Does that look familiar to anybody? That kind of setup right there. There's an equal sign in the middle. Have you guys seen proportions in math class? Yes, kind of-ish. So usually what happens, your teacher sometimes has you draw in little, we used to call it butterfly, I don't know, when I was in high school. But it's crisscross. So you basically multiply, and then you'll divide by the opposite number, the other number, right? You multiply these two, divide by that. Or, like I said, just do that. So what is the value that you guys are now getting? 126.237. I agree. It sounds very reasonable because it's less than 145. So it means that it's taking a portion of that sample. And now you've got it. Okay? So, is this last thing that we did, is this necessary to get percent composition? No. All right? This is an additional kind of question. So I wanted to make sure that you guys had 2 of these examples, right? So one of each kind of thing. So you should be able to try a couple on your own. So let's leave example 3 blank for now. Whenever you're ready, flip the page over. And what I'm going to have you do is I would like you guys to try out number 1 and number 2. Okay? And I'll put the percentages off to the right. That way you have that to check. And then once you've gotten done with number 1 and number 2, I'm going to get you to please pull out Schoology and knock out the percent composition assignment.